Did that on purpose so you'd all smile. So. Anyway, I am opening the Wyoming School Facilities Commission business meeting. It's November 7th, 2024 at 8:30 a.m. And the thing on my desk said we have 20% relative humidity in here and it's 71 degrees. So first item we have, we'll do our introductions of the commission. Will introduce ourselves and the staff will introduce themselves. And those in the room, if you'd be so kind as to tell who you are today also.
Chairman Tarter, would you like me to take roll call this morning?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Commissioner Conklin?
Present.
Commissioner Ferens?
Present.
Commissioner Kashelhofer?
Present.
Commissioner Thayer?
Present.
Commissioner Thorne?
Present.
Commissioner Van Mark?
Present.
Trent Carroll for Superintendent Dagenfelder?
Present.
Chairman Tarter?
It's present.
All present.
Okay, if the staff would like to introduce themselves now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Dale McComey. I'm Director for the State Construction Department.
I'm John Rexis. I'm the Project Management Supervisor for School Facilities.
Shelby Carlson, School Facilities Division Administrator.
Laura Anderson, Operations and Finance Administrator.
Okay, thank you. If we could start over here with this gentleman and introduce yourself. If you'd like to introduce yourself. Thank you all.
I just told him that.
The next item I have on the agenda is the director. I have any remarks he'd like to make?
Hit the button myself, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'd just like to thank the commission and the public for their attendance last night at the meeting. I learned a lot, had a lot of comments from the public, and so just appreciative of that. And I guess that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I would just mimic that. Thank you for your engagement yesterday, and thank you to the public for being present to speak their concerns.
Thank you both. Next item we have is the approval of the agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda.
I need a second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any additions or corrections? Any additions or corrections? Any additions or corrections? Since you're ready to vote, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. The next item we have is we are going to go into an executive session. I don't know how long it will take, but I need a motion to go into executive session.
I move we go into executive session, Mr. Chairman.
I need a second.
Chairman, we need the actual motion read, please.
Well, I'll try that again. I move the School Facilities Commission go into the executive session for the purpose of receiving confidential legal advice and discussing land issues.
I need a second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion?
Chairman, this is Commissioner Ferens. Is there a separate link for this?
No.
Commissioner Ferens, no, you'll stay in this. And for those of you in the public online, we're going to move you into the waiting room. If you just please wait there, and we'll readmit you when we come back out of executive session.
Are there any other questions? Since you're in vote, all those in favor of going into the executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same sign, so moved. We will gather you all back up shortly.
For the public, make sure you take all your items with you, please.
We are now coming back into our regular session. The next item is in our booklets, tab 1, routine maintenance, major maintenance, and component projects by John Rexis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today we wanted to have a brief discussion about routine maintenance, major maintenance, and component level projects. And I'm going to start right in and walk through routine maintenance. Following that, I'll go into major maintenance, and then I'll talk a little bit about the component level projects as well. And please feel free to ask questions or interject as we go. I'd like to see this as an interactive discussion. And there's a lot to talk about, but I know that we've got a lot of ground to cover today too. So I'm going to try to be as concise and brief as I can. Routine maintenance means activities necessary to keep a school building or facility in safe and good working order so that it may be used at its original or designed capacity for its originally intended purposes, including janitorial, groundskeeping, and maintenance tasks done on a routine basis, typically accomplished by district personnel, with some exceptions. Routine maintenance tasks are performed on a regular basis, such as weekly, monthly, quarterly, or annually. And they include tasks like cleaning, inspections, minor repairs, lubrication, and adjustments. Some examples are HVAC filter replacements, lighting checks, cleaning gutters, downspouts, and general upkeep of landscaping, or more commonly known as groundskeeping. Actual replacement of landscaping will be covered under major maintenance. Routine maintenance is usually predictable and can be scheduled in advance, and it is often performed by in-house staff and requires minimal external resources. It reduces the likelihood of equipment failures and unplanned outages, maintains optimal performance of systems and equipment. It ensures that facilities meet safety and regulatory standards. Routine maintenance leads to increased, like I said, operational efficiency, but also helps realize industry life expectancy standards. So if you're not taking care and doing your routine maintenance in a proper manner, there is the potential that some of those systems are going to fail prematurely. Routine maintenance funding comes through the WDE block grant, so that's separate than what we control on our end. And I've listed some examples for you in the packet of what we would consider to be routine maintenance. Major maintenance means the repair or replacement of complete or major portions of school building and facility systems at irregular intervals, which is required to continue the use of the building or facility at its original capacity or its original intended use, and is typically accomplished by contractors. Major maintenance is less predictable and occurs on an as-needed basis. It includes replacing or repairing HVAC systems, boilers, structural repairs, roofing, foundation work, wall finishes, casework, and flooring, just to name a few. not that it limits it to those things. Major maintenance can only be expended on existing systems and cannot be used to install non-existent or new systems. Major maintenance projects usually require extensive planning, coordination, and potentially involve multiple contractors or specialists and consultants. Major maintenance addresses significant wear and tear, restores functionality, and brings systems up to current standards. There is the potential to upgrade systems with the use of major maintenance, as long as you're not changing the intended use of that system or the capacity of that system. So I just want to talk about that a little bit, because a lot of the times when we use capacity, we're talking about students in seats, but it's also a consideration by the project managers when we're reviewing the planned work orders in regards to what that capacity of that system was. So if you've got, say, I'm going to use something that's maybe slightly unorthodox, but if you've got like a 20-gallon hot water heater, so to speak, you can't necessarily go in and replace that with a 200-gallon hot water heater unless there's no longer a 20-gallon hot water heater available, and the smallest one that you can buy is that. So those are the types of things that our project managers look at when they're reviewing these planned work orders. And I've included some other examples of what typical major maintenance work is in the packet. And then we move on to component level projects, which means projects that are developed to implement remedies to address facility condition by repairing or replacing facility components when it is determined by the commission that it is not feasible for a district to do so solely with major building and facility repair and replacement funds, otherwise known as major maintenance. Component projects require a capital construction budget request for funding. Component projects are determined by the same conditions as major maintenance for approval, and typically the commission prioritizes and requests component project funds annually. Component projects are similar in scope to larger maintenance projects and must meet the same qualifying standards. Don't mean to be redundant, but I can't stress that enough. Component projects are highly complex and held to the same standards as project-specific capital construction appropriations, such as funding oversight, planning, coordination, and a contract compliance audit as it relates to budget and expenditures. The objectives for component level projects is very similar as the major maintenance objectives. Essentially, it's just maintain and keep our school buildings at a certain standard and a certain condition. Component funding provides relief to districts that are unable to cover the cost of major component or system replacements with existing major maintenance fund balances. Additionally, if a district utilizes ordinary major maintenance funds for a project on the scale of a component project, it may deplete the district's ability to address other deferred maintenance, resulting in consequential damages that can make a difficult situation even worse. So those are considerations that we look at when we're prioritizing and vetting our component level projects as well. Depending on the amount of deficiencies that are existing or projected within the district and what the available major maintenance funds balances are for that particular district, along with what we're projecting as future funds for that, then we can make a determination of whether or not the district has the ability to cover those costs. Amounts for component projects are requested through the School Facilities Commission annual budget request to the Wyoming Legislature and are subject to legislative approval. So in conclusion, the primary difference between routine and major maintenance lies in the frequency, scope, cost, and objectives. Both types of maintenance are critical for effective facility management, and a balanced approach helps ensure the long-term functionality and safety of facilities. And then I included in your packet a little discussion about the component level funding program and what it's used for and how it helps. And then we also talk a little bit about statutory requirements by the district to address their ones and twos. We talk about that extensively in their facility plans. Not always necessarily mandating that a district actually remedy a 1 or a 2, but as long as we're aware of the justification and the reasons why they're holding off on that, we keep that and note it within the facility plan, and we continue to observe that through the years until it comes to a point where it makes good sense for the district to go and do that. Sometimes a district may have some redundancy with their systems, and they want to get as much life out of some of those components and systems as they possibly can before they replace it. Other times it makes good sense, you know, if there's the potential for it affecting their operations, for them to go ahead and replace those at their projected end of life, as opposed to waiting for them to die and then having an emergency. So it really just depends on the system and component we're talking about, what redundancy is there, and the timing of all the other work that needs to be done and how that's prioritized. And with that being said, I'll go ahead and open it up for questions or discussion. Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add a bit on that, on the funding. So when we think about these 3 different activities, how the funding's handled, so on the routine maintenance, that funding goes through the block grant to the district. Look at major maintenance funding, that's formula driven. That funding comes to the state construction department to administer, and it then is administered out to the district. Any use of major maintenance and expenditures has to be approved by the state construction department, has to be shown in the district's facility plan and recorded in their report at the end of the year. And then component projects go through the capital construction process, where we go in and make a specific request to the legislature, and those get funded as capital construction projects. So really 3 very fundamentally different funding mechanisms. And then I thought I might ask Commissioner Thorne if he might kind of put the district twist on this. So, you know, how do you look at these different activities as you administer those funds with your buildings?
Absolutely, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's on. Obviously, there's some common sense that is approached with a lot of these projects. That was iterated with Mr. Rexius's comments. You know, from a maintenance perspective, obviously that boots on the ground, that taking care of issues as they arise, and replacing those valves, replacing those belts, replacing those filters, obviously provide longevity of life of the facility, of the systems within the facility, all those things. We have been blessed, I would say, with our funding structure that we have for our buildings and for the maintenance of those buildings. I feel that we haven't had any issues in taking care of things that we've needed to take care of. And we've had some issues. We've had some issues with electricity within our building and frying electronics and some of those types of things, but we've been able to work our way through those through this process. So I feel the process is very good. I appreciate the common sense aspect of looking at these things. When you were talking, Mr. Rexius, I was thinking about, all right, so if there's a school that was built in the 1960s or the 1970s, they need a new HVAC system. You know, it would make common sense that we would add air conditioning to that system. So from that perspective, and as technology changes, we've been in our new building for 7 years, 8 years, and already control systems have changed drastically in monitoring and running HVAC systems. And so those things and looking at industry standards and looking at the direction that things are going fit well within this realm. And so that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Question for John. Do you find that the small square footage districts would use the component projects more than they would the major maintenance? Because they don't accrue much major maintenance in those smaller square footage districts.
Mr. Chairman, that's an accurate statement. You know, the smaller districts get paid, basically it's a formula that takes into account the amount of students and the amount of square footage that they have in their districts. And I don't mean to oversimplify that, but it's a somewhat complicated formula, and I would say the smaller districts just have a difficult time building up enough reserves to cover some of these larger ticket items like a roof replacement or a full mechanical replacement or a renovation, so to speak. So we do see that, but at the same time, everything is somewhat relative to the larger districts still need to take care of many more buildings and many more schools than smaller districts do. It just provides the larger districts with a little more maneuverability, if you will, because they're able to reallocate and move funds around a little bit to cover some of those larger expenses. But it still doesn't mean that their buildings aren't depreciating and aging at the same rate that the smaller districts' buildings are. I think it's probably important to note that we are looking at opening up a component level funding prioritization process to include more feedback and participation by the districts to make those types of requests. The last couple of years, you know, we based it basically on the available balance in relation to the existing and projected deficiencies to create kind of an index number to prioritize those. But we feel like we've gotten to a place where I wouldn't say leveled the playing field, but I'd say we're much closer to that. And so I think now it's probably time to start opening things up a little bit and giving everybody that kind of consideration and involving the facility managers and the business managers and the administration of these districts in that process.
Okay. Any further questions for John? Anything you want to add, Dale?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. So right now, the Joint Appropriations Committee at their last meeting passed forward a bill that'll be going to the legislature this year. It's going to be taken up on the House side or run through the House side to start with. Representative Larson from Lander was pretty integral in working on this. He worked on a similar bill last year. This bill is 0064. I don't know what will come out in the formal process on the bill number. But it's trying to tie together the definitions of routine maintenance, major maintenance, component projects, those sort of things for all buildings statewide. So believe it or not, there's different definitions for schools under some of those than there is on state buildings than what the community colleges use for those same terms and on and on. So the object of that bill is to make all those definitions somewhat similar. And it will also require a routine maintenance plan be put together by all of those entities that deal with routine maintenance. And so it'll be interesting to see how that moves through. I think it's a good idea because not only do I wear a hat on the school facility side, but also on the state side, and we deal with community colleges on this construction management division of the department. And so I think that will be helpful. Just some observations of 5 or 6 years of doing this and definitions. And that is on routine maintenance and major maintenance. There's been discussions at different times on, you know, how do you set a hard and fast definition of what is routine maintenance? What's the cutoff line? Is the cutoff line here? Is the cutoff line there? And I think John expressed this. There's some generalized definitions, but it really boils down to the district working with our managers as to what is really a routine maintenance situation versus a major maintenance funded issue. And so, you know, we've got a couple of things we're actually visiting on here just in the last couple of days. And so I throw it out to open up your owner's manual in your automobile book. And, you know, as John said, these are kind of things that are commonly done, routinely done over a shorter time frame. But I just made a call up to, I have a Ram diesel pickup, and I just made a call to the dealer because in the sheet they gave me when I bought the truck, it said you shall change the transmission. Or in the owner's manual, it's saying with the type of transmission I have in my truck, you should change the fluid at 30,000 miles. The sheet that they gave me that detailed out what needed to be done didn't include that. So then I also asked them, I said, okay, so what is it? And they said, well, it's about 50,000 miles. And there was different types of transmissions, so I hope they got it right. So if it goes out, I'm not fighting with them later on. But I did write down the date and who I talked to. So anyway, but you know, so at 50,000 miles, is that once a year? Is that an 18,000, 18 months? Or no, it's way down, it's maybe, for my case, it's gonna be about 7 or 8 or 9 years down the road, at least, maybe more than that. So when we look at stuff on the routine maintenance side, the major maintenance side in a building, and it's something that a condition needs to be remedied, and it's something that they're required to check on, it's something that hasn't been broke, but there needs to be a check done on something, and it's 2 years, 3 years down the road, it's a little bit outside of this definition, and that's where, we sit down with our project managers and talk to them. Superintendent Thorne made a pretty good observation on the changes in technology and how that's evolving. So for example, in 2015, I can just tell you a hard and fast rule with the department was, if you don't have air conditioning, you don't get air conditioning with major maintenance. And things started to evolve then in technology. And so it actually, interestingly enough, on rooftop units, heating units, it was cheaper to buy a unit. So a lot of your older schools didn't have air conditioning and they had rooftop heating systems. The industry changed to where it was actually, you could get combo cooling heating units for the roof. And believe it or not, the combo heating cooling unit was cheaper than just buying the heating unit. So it made sense that we then allowed the districts to put in air conditioning when they didn't have air conditioning before, which is somewhat outside of the definition of major maintenance. And it actually, believe it or not, saved us money. So it's an evolving process, and there's been discussions with the commission in the past, in a former life as the director. What's that flexibility look like? Where's that cutoff line? Do we move the line from here to there? I would just say it doesn't matter where you move the line to, there's probably gonna be some overlap and some gray area. And so again, it's just working with our partners in the schools, and some cases on the state side, community college side, as to what qualifies for and what doesn't, so.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Thank you, John. Next item we have on our agenda is the 2024-2025 School Facility Commission special meetings with Shelley Lovato. And there's a couple of us that would, on the November 20th meeting, would like to move it to the 21st. We talked with Director McComey on that this morning a little bit. We're both tied up the 20th.
Okay.
So if we could do that, does that screw anybody else up? Yeah, but you're from Torrington, we ain't gonna worry about that. Since when?
I'm good. I
Okay, good. You okay? Everybody else okay? You okay, Tony? Yeah. Okay. Any other dates that we may need to change? We had the November 20th, and we changed it to November 21st. The next one will be December 4th. And then December 18th, then January 15th, and then February 19th. Does anybody at this time see a need to change any of those dates? And we can always change them later, but this is just a good guide and start.
Mr. Chairman, do you have an anticipated time for those meetings?
I don't. Administrator Carlson, do you have a?
Mr. Chairman, I don't either. I do envision that the 21st will be virtual. And then I think I'll work with the chairman and we can set times when we get there. I envision on the 21st, we'll be hearing two Mercers, both of those out of Lincoln 2, one for Etna Elementary School as well as their Afton Transportation Facility. So those are the two that I anticipate we will be hearing that day. I think they will go relatively quickly. My hope for December 4th is that we have Campbell County High School to be looking at that meeting.
Would we be doing that one virtually or maybe on site at Campbell or?
I think we'll wait and see how that Mercer.
See how it goes,
Yeah,
okay.
see how it goes, see our meeting with the board goes, and then make that decision.
Okay. Any other questions? I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the proposed dates for Mercer reviews.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any discussion? Since you need to vote, all those in favor of approving the scheduled dates, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Next item is tab 3. It's the approval of the minutes of our previous meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I move the SFC approve the SSD's recommendation as indicated with the minutes for September 2024 meeting as presented.
I need a second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any additions or corrections? Any discussion? Any additions or corrections? Seeing you're ready to vote, all those in favor of approving the previous business meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, sign. Next item is 4 with Laura Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, we'll go through the commission's financials. We start on tab 4, page 21, and we'll just run through the balances of the accounts. 17-18, you have 1.197 million in unanticipated. In 21-22, we have $1 million even. 23-24 is just a little under $2.4 million, and 25-26 is $10.4 million. In the Land Opportunity Fund, there is $750,000. The Emergency Fund is $4,093,278, and the Planning Fund is $3.5 million. Moving along then to page 23, this is where we will look at all of the accounts combined, the operations, major maintenance, and capital construction, then break them down into sections on the following pages. So just as a note, on column C, you'll see there's been like $4.697 billion appropriated to the commission over the years for school improvement. Moving along to the next section, page 24, this is the operations section. One of the columns I regularly monitor is column D, which is our expenditures, which are all in line with what we would expect to see. That's a normal amount. Moving along to the major maintenance page on 25, this is where we keep track of all the major maintenance, and that the second quarter payment is not reflected here because that went out October 1st, and these are the September financials, in case you're wondering. So next time we do this, you'll see that reflected in there. The district expenditures, you'll notice we are still missing one district for the major maintenance that has not been reconciled. Our staff member that is doing that has worked diligently with them, and she continues to do so. So as soon as we have that reconciled, we'll get you an updated major maintenance report. Moving along to page 26, this is the capital construction appropriation summary. I'm just making sure that all of those balances are going down and that we're getting that money out the door into the districts. Then we move along to page 27. This is the capital construction transaction summary report. I'll draw your attention to column B, the transfers in and out. And this is where we move stuff from the budgeted, out of the budgeted category, up into the awarded category. That's where we actually have a contract in place. The two largest projects that we had there were about 90% of that $650,000. One went to the Little Powder demo and the other one went to the Antelope Creek Elementary School modular. The details of those are on pages 32 to 33. Then we take a look at pages 28 through 31. Those are all of the details of the unanticipated accounts that you can see for yourself on those pages. That takes us to pages 32 and 33, which are the details of the transfers in and out that you can take a look at there. And then that brings us to the end of the report, which is pages 34 through the end of the tab, which is a listing of the appropriations by district and facility. Are there any questions that I can answer for any of you today?
Any questions? I would entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the financial report.
I need a second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Since you're ready to vote, all those in favor of approving the funding transactions, financial reports, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? So moved. Next section, item is number 5, John Rex's executive section action.
Mr. Chairman, for the executive session action, the school construction or state construction department's recommendation is that the School Facilities Commission approve Crook County School District 1's request to begin land acquisition efforts in accordance with Chapter 9, Section 6 of the SFC rules, using funds from the land opportunity account, and to waive the 2 due diligence requirements discussed above during that process. I'm sorry, discussed during the executive session.
I would entertain a motion.
I move that SFC approve the school and state construction division's recommendation as indicated.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. 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 Since you're ready to vote, all those in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. So moved. The next item on our agenda is item 6, Laramie County School District Number 1, request for adoption of the Mercer for Laramie County School District Number 1 Elementary Schools. Administrator Carlson, please.
Mr. Chairman, I will walk through this summary sheet, which summarizes what you heard last evening. So in 2023, the legislature appropriated $95 million to the department. We've been working on this Mercer since January, and within that $95 million, we have tentatively designated $41,708,117 as a placeholder for a Laramie County School District Number 1 elementary school. That legislation does require that the project must be shown in the district's facility plan, as well as the commission shall have adopted a most cost-effective remedy. In 2024, the legislature appropriated an additional $41,708,117 for design and construction of a second Laramie County School District Number 1 elementary school. That legislation has the same requirements on it, that it be in the facility plan and that it be contained, that Mercer be accepted. The most cost-effective remedy is the remedy that is deemed to optimize the benefits relative to the cost. The 7 elementary schools that were identified that had a finding for capacity was ARP Elementary School, Saddle Ridge Elementary School, and Sunrise. Condition, Buffalo Ridge Elementary School, Hobbs Elementary, Jessup Elementary, and Miller. Given the fact that there were multiple buildings, the department made the decision to have the consultant evaluate all elementary schools across the district. The purpose of the Mercer was to consider potential remedies to resolve identified needs while delivering quality educational services. The requirements of that study was to ensure that we had a remedy to the 7 facilities that had been identified. We aligned with uniform adequacy standards. We provided a sustainable long-term solution for the district's facility needs. We balanced benefits, costs, efficiency, and educational outcomes, and consider current and future enrollments. This consultant began with 18 different potential remedies that followed 6 different themes, looking at individual sites only, considering mixed configurations, a full 5-6 implementation, full 4-6 implementation, elimination of the 5-6 schools, and returning to a K-6 configuration across the district. 2 key decisions that were made early in the process was that the triad layout would be retained. Mr. Small discussed that at length yesterday evening, and that the study would align with the K4, 5, 6 grade configuration, as that was a decision that was made in 2013 and had been implemented in 2 of the 3 triads. Through the above criteria, consolidating potential remedies by merging the options that yielded similar option or outcomes, and then going through a 3-day facilitated choosing by advantages process, the options were reduced down to a total of 3. Actually, we went down to 7, let me get that straight, and a stakeholder analysis was performed, and we identified and weighted critical factors, focusing on impacts to the students, their learning environment, and their educational needs. Once we had done that, and we focused on evaluating those remedies against those advantages or benefits first, and then we looked at applying first-time costs only. The purpose of this activity was to ensure that the advanced remedies provided the highest overall value and supported the goal to identify remedies that offered the best results within the cost-effective analysis. The next page shows those 7 remedies. It shows how they spread themselves apart and grouped, and the decision was made by the team that we look at those that provided the highest level of advantage to the district. So there were those 3 advantages or options came through. Potential remedy number 1 was the current district programming, keeping smaller neighborhood elementary schools. Remedy number 2, construction with fewer larger elementary schools. And potential remedy 3, right-sized modern school facilities that address district program needs, adequate capacity, and acceptable condition. The next step was to consider each remedy logistically. So they were all laid out in a prioritized schedule, with each potential remedy based on the 7 schools identified, indicating the action to be accomplished with each facility, as well as the timing of that action. Through that process, there was identified a hybrid remedy, picking parts and pieces of those 3 remedies that we thought would result in a more efficient remedy. And so we came out with remedy number 4, as well as remedy number 5. All 5 of those remedies were then put through the present value cost process, looking at a 20-year time frame. If we want to be cost effective, we need to look over the long term. We know the conditions on schools are changing all the time based on age, major maintenance things that come up, roofs, HVAC systems, those types of things. So we wanted to look over a 20-year time frame, determine that present value analysis. The first-time capital construction costs were included, ongoing operations and maintenance and routine maintenance costs, ongoing major maintenance costs, and demolition costs were included for facilities proposed to come offline for the purposes of cost only. Disposition of those buildings has not been determined at this time. Costs were inflated by 4.6% per year, and then discounted back by 5.6% to come up with the present value. for each of those remedies. The outcome of this step determined the most cost-effective strategy and solution based on considering overall costs and comparing to the advantages or lack thereof for each potential remedy. As you'll see in this list, remedy number 4 came in as the most cost-effective. It's got the highest advantage score, lowest present value at $3,011 million. And then you'll see a graph there that shows how those remedies compared to each other. So based on this, remedy 4 was determined to be the most cost-effective remedy with the maximum advantage score and the lowest overall present value cost. The next page, you will see the remedy number 4 infographic that we walked through last night. You will see there the first action is the construction of the new 5-6 with ARP coming in and opening up a year later. That lines up some rebounding and reconfiguration, as well as 4 schools going offline. Then in 30, looking at future conditions on coal based on the 2023 facility condition assessment, we can see that that building will come in for a need, and it is scheduled to be replaced out in 34. Looking at the central triad, the third actual construction action that would occur would be Hobbs Elementary School, with that school opening in 2030. You can see that Jessup, Miller, and Deming are proposed to come offline, and then you will see some reconfiguration and some boundary adjustments that occur with those schools closing, and then as students are moved to other schools within the central triad. Looking at the east triad, we had Buffalo Ridge and Saddle Ridge. You can see the district felt that they could manage the capacity issue at Saddle Ridge for a time, as the above, looking at ARP, the 5-6 and Hobbs was considered a more urgent need. So they felt they could manage the capacity issues at Saddle Ridge 1. And so you'll see that on the east triad, we come in with our next major action is to construct a Saddle Ridge 2 that would be opened in 2032. And then you can see a potential addition onto Meadowlark. And I would say both of those are potential as we move through this. Certainly we'll be able to see what enrollment projections and capacities are doing as we move through the process. The next infographic actually was supposed to be deleted, so that's a mistake. You can X through that. Looking at the individual construction and demolition costs for each capital construction action, these are shown estimated in 2024 dollars. The graph shows you the school. It shows you as well the cost estimate in $24 for each of those actions. And then on the right column, it shows you what session that we would be going in to make those budget requests. If you look at ARP replacement as well as the new 5-6, we have funding available to kick off with those 2 projects. We may potentially have funding left to start the design on Hobbs. As noted, the final disposition of offline buildings has not been determined. However, an allowance for demolition has been included for cost purposes only. On October 7th, 2024, the Board of Trustees for Laramie County School District Number 1 unanimously concurred with remedy number 4 as the most cost-effective remedy for the Laramie County School District elementary schools. Based on public feedback and concerns with the preferred alternative, the State Construction Department had amended FEA's contract to review option number 1B in the same method, using the same financial analysis process as was performed for the other 5 remedies. As noted last night, present value that comes in $8 million higher, as opposed to 7 actions. With the preferred alternative, we have 13 actions with option 1B. So action item, adoption of the Mercer study for Laramie County School District Number 1 allows the facility plan to be updated available funds to be released to begin the design and future construction of the new 5-6 on ARP Elementary School, both in the South Triad, possible release of design funds for Hobbs Elementary School, and establishes the timeframes for subsequent funding requests to be made by the State Construction Department and timeframes to deploy the Mercer in its entirety. I have listed the references there, state statute, as well as session laws and rules and regulations regarding Mercer studies, as well as budget recommendations. So I've moved to page 60. Potential results. If the Mercer is adopted by the School Facilities Commission, it would allow the State Construction Department to incorporate the Mercer into the Laramie County School District Number 1 facility plan, and would allow the SCD to release the $41.7 million set as a placeholder for Laramie County School District Number 1 Elementary School that has been designated tentatively in the $95 million that was appropriated in 2023, as well as the $41.7 million appropriated in the 2024 session in order to begin the design for the new 5-6 as well as ARP. After these projects are let out to bid, if sufficient funds remain within the $83.4 million, the design of Hobbs Elementary School may proceed without an appropriation request. Adoption of the Mercer would also establish long-term goals to guide future funding requests from the School Facilities Commission to the legislature. If no Mercer is adopted, the State Construction Department will continue to be unable to move forward with these projects or any other remedy to address the identified issues. Recommendation, the State Construction Department recommends that the Commission adopt remedy number 4 for the Laramie County School District Number 1 elementary schools, as the remedy is in the best financial and educational interests of the state, taking into consideration the most efficient and cost-effective approach in order to deliver quality educational services and address building and facility needs, having taken into consideration the effects of the proposed activity on the local community. Ask if there's any questions.
Chairman, I believe Commissioner Ferens may have a question.
Commissioner Farron?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I do not have a question. I just wanted to mention that I will be recusing myself from this action for any potential conflict of interest. I meant to mention that before Shelby got started, but she went faster than I could get to my speaker button.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate the honesty. The next item, actually, before we have discussion, we should probably have a recommended motion. I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the SFC approve the State Construction Department's recommended motion as written.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Discussion? Discussion. Since you're ready to vote.
Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor, please say aye. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I have a couple of comments on this item. First, the requirement in Wyoming Statute 2115-117, subsection D, that was brought up yesterday a couple of times. There are several things in that statute that stood out to me as very germane to this conversation. The law requires adoption of the remedy that is not only in the best financial interest of the state, but also the best educational interest of the state, and with consideration of the effects of the proposed activity on the local community. With regard to the financial interests of the state, the Mercer and the department, I think, have provided the commission with a lot of details, as well as the rationale that support the Mercer recommendation with regard to cost. So I wanted to provide a big thank you to the department for all the work that went into that. When it comes to the requirement in the law regarding the best educational interests of the state and the effect of the proposed activity on the community, I was left with several questions yesterday based on the public comments. The first thing that's a little bit complicated here is that there was a unanimous vote by the locally elected Board of Trustees to adopt the Mercer. The board is obviously expected to act in a manner that reflects the educational interests of the district and the families in the community. So we have that evidence to consider. On the other hand, we heard from many members in the community yesterday, including parents who strongly opposed the Mercer because they felt it is not in the best educational interests of their children or their families. Comments from many members in the community who reside in these exact neighborhoods that would be impacted by the Mercer. Those comments do not align with the action of the board. So I'm not sure how we reconcile those differences. It would have been nice to have a trustee at the meeting yesterday to hear their perspective and maybe ask them some questions. Lastly, with regard to the effects of the proposed activity on the local community, the public comments yesterday predominantly focused on perceived negative effects on the local community. In contrast, there hasn't been nearly as much information regarding the positive effects on the community that would result from the Mercer. So based on those observations, I believe it would be helpful for the commission to receive additional information with regard to the positive effects on the community before making a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion?
I spent some time considering this. Some of these I heard a lot of information last night, and I do appreciate the comments. I struggle because our charge is the best interest of the state and the community, but it's a community as a whole, not a specific area of the community. And as I drove by our elementary school and the old one and looked at it to see what it was about, and I have a sense of some of the other elementary schools, the newer ones, and as I tried to work my way through this, recognizing the effort that went into the Mercer and the level of detail that goes into those, I was struck that in order to achieve that balance, we have to look at the community as a whole and recognize the different demographics within the community. And I realize that the ARP area is not socially, economically as well off as some of the other areas, and probably haven't got the parents and participants here because they would just like to have something. And so that balance to me feels like that's our obligation, to look at that and look at the community as a whole. There have been decisions that have been made in the past, and I wasn't on the board when they were done, but where we had to close schools, not in a neighborhood, but in an actual town, and bus the children 15, 20 miles away to another town. And I think it would be disingenuous for us to go back and say, well, we need to have, we can't close a school or move a school today, but we could do it 20 years ago. It impacted, small towns in other parts of the state. So I appreciate what Commissioner Carroll has indicated there, but from my perspective, our job is to look at the financial and interest of the students. I have to presume that those in the Laramie County School District #1, the people in education who certainly have more understanding and knowledge than I do, and they voted 8-0 to go that, would have the background, at least from the people they're working with, to be able to work their way through that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Joni?
I was very glad to hear the comments last night, but as I look at where we are now, we have funding in place for 2 new schools in the South Triad. And I know that Mr. Knapp and Laramie County District has been working on a plan for quite some time, started in 2013 with the 5-6 configurations. And in the time that I have been on this commission, Mr. Knapp has pretty consistently been at our meetings, at select committee meetings, and even if we weren't addressing anything on the agenda for Laramie County, he always was sharing where they were in the progress, what their needs were, kind of how things were evolving. So he's been in constant contact and letting us know what is going on in the Laramie School District. And now there's funding for 2 schools. If we approve this Mercer, 2 new schools start in the South Triad. where the need is great. If we don't approve this, everything stops, and heaven only knows when that possibility will present itself again. So when I vote, I want the parents of the Central Triad to know that I hear you, I know your neighborhoods, I know your schools. My niece and nephew went to Deming, my great-nephew is in Jessup. I know what you have. But in the context of being a commissioner that looks at the educational needs of thousands of children across hundreds of miles and 48 school districts, we need to do what's best for all students, and we need to look at the South Triad.
Thank you. Further discussion? Then since you're ready to vote, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion is approved. Thank you. Now we will take public comments. 5 minutes. Anybody would like to come up to the table and speak, please come up at the present time and speak. And if you don't, we will probably be adjourning our meeting. There's Mr. Knapp. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, we have a comment online.
Okay,
Someone's
we're gonna have Mr. Knapp, I think,
Okay.
first, then we'll take the online person.
Okay.
There we go, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I just wanted to come up and thank you guys for all the work they've put in this, and the State Construction Department and FEA as well. I think what I appreciate the most is, you mentioned, Commissioner Thorne talked about the process a little bit ago, and this process, we've worked through it and stuck with it. And this is going to, help our district a lot currently. I know at times it feels like the process gets a little cumbersome, but as we work through it, as you all know, this will become part of Laramie One's plan. And of course, any future action always requires funding. So that plan will stay in place, and that will trigger times when we will meet with the State Construction Department for funding requests as well. But approving this today allows us to move forward with design and construction of 2 new elementary schools, as well as getting hopefully a little bit of reprieve in the cost and maintenance with some other non-construction alternatives. So just wanted to thank everyone again for working through that process.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate your efforts. Okay, somebody online, please.
Let's start with Katie online. Go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Katie Dykestal, and thank you for the opportunity for a second round of public comment. Again, I am a parent of a Jessup Elementary student who will now no longer have a building after today. I wanted to reiterate a couple of my comments from last night that, are moot, I suppose, at this point, but just so that we're all on the same page here. The decision that was just made removes access for 1,120 students in our district. So hearing the comments about, best for all, what we've done now with Mercer's is we've turned Mercer's into, stealing from one to give to another. And that's a pretty shocking thought. So if I'm a district anywhere else in the state, I'm pretty nervous right now, knowing that our new precedent is now that if I want to get one building, I'm going to have to sacrifice another. I'm going to reiterate that this has never, ever been done before. So our decision today displaces 1,120 students. That's not the good of the whole. That's 1 in every 10 students in our district is now displaced. This commission absolutely had and has the ability to find a gray option, not a black or a white option. I'd also like to bring to your attention that the demolition of these 8 buildings is going to cost the state $13 million. In fact, that is more money than the $8 million that Ms. Carlson says will be saved from going with 4C versus 1B or any other option. Our goal is the educational best interest. The district was given this study as a board 6 days before they were forced to vote on it. They said publicly they felt as though they had no choice. They said publicly that they did not want to do this. There was no educational interests considered here. The 3 administrators that sat in that room and made the decisions, not one of them was from the Department of Instruction. So please be aware that the people that made the decision about the educational best interests of students had no accolades to be able to do that. I also want to point out that there's over $20,000 in LCSD1's major maintenance fund that they're holding on to. I would ask you to ask them why. I appreciate that we have great relationships with Mr. Knapp and all of the district, but these are problems that we're not getting answers to. I'm very, very concerned about this new precedent that is set here today, that Mercers are now used as long-term facility plans. They're not used to fix buildings. Jessup, Deming, Miller, they all have problems that needed to be addressed, and our answer was to demolish them. You are all sitting right now in a capital that we found money to replace and repair and maintain because it mattered. We didn't mow it down because of the masonry. We didn't mow it down because of the windows. We found an answer. So the decision today, and I'm happy that it helps the South Side, hurts 1,000 other students. I am sad, I am devastated, and I'll remind you again about my sweet girl Lottie that will lose her school today. And we need to all be okay with that. There was not much discussion from this commission last night, not much at all. The construction department is taking education away from students, and we have to be okay with that. This irreparably harms our children. So everybody in this room gets to go home today. The construction department gets to go home today and be okay with this. Our family will never be the same. And to be clear, we will be busing these kids. We've solved an ARP problem to cause 8 more of the exact same issue. My child will now be bused across a highway and an interstate. If a child goes to school at Bain Elementary, which is on the south side, they will get bused almost 5 miles as the crow flies to get to the 5th, 6th grade site near Afflerbach Elementary. We need to talk about facts. A question that was asked last night was regarding to the K456 model, and could Coyote Ridge be reconfigured to be a K6 building? The answer that was given was not true. If you've ever been in that building, which I have many, many times, it's a school building with mobile furniture that can absolutely be converted. The district is not looking at solving these problems. They are looking at new construction. So I just want you all to be aware that when you leave here today, how much this is hurting children, how much this is hurting families. The district doesn't care. The construction department clearly doesn't care. I appreciate your willingness to hear us out. I really, really do. Please understand what you're doing to our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Next.
Hi, my name's Carrie Barker, and I am a teacher here in the district, and I am a teacher at ARP. So I would like to thank you because our kids really do deserve this. And we have been in this transitional place for 2 years now, and it is very hard on our kids to be bused across and not be in their home schools. And we don't have the parent representation that we would like to have because our parents feel intimidated, they are working, they are incapable of coming. So as a teacher, that's my job, to advocate for my students. And I would just like to thank you all because I know this is a difficult decision and it is hard for those other parents and students, but our ARP kids and those Southside kids are very thankful for this, and we will be forever grateful for this decision. So I just appreciate you. I know this is hard decisions, and I appreciate you taking your time to drive by ARP and ARP Ridge this morning because that shows that you are caring and thinking of the big picture, and we appreciate that. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Tony, if you could please unmute and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Tony Brannon. I am in and have kids in the East Triad. I also have a kiddo at Triumph on the South Side. I first just want to say thank you again for the public comment. I know that's been said, but I know this is dragging things out and for you guys, and I just appreciate being heard. And I think whatever the decision came to the frustrating thing for me is that we came to this decision with very little of this. So I know this is going to go through. I know this is going to happen. But I just want to reiterate that it did not happen in a fair manner. This wasn't completed the way neighborhoods should have been informed, conversations should have been had among these communities. When I was at Bain, every parent that I talked to and teachers that I talked to at Bain want Bain to stay open. One person said, hey, it'd be nice if we had AC. But everybody else said, and he signed my petition. He signed the petition for 1B. He still wants his school open. He still wants his child to go to that school. I also want to say that I am extremely grateful that the South Side is going to get 2 new schools. They absolutely do need it. I'm definitely in favor of that. And I appreciate you doing that. But again, the way this was done, it could have been done a different way. We could have provided those South Side schools a different way without closing these neighborhood schools. I also just want to leave the question, how does leaving vacant schools on the South Side support the South Side community? I am concerned for those neighborhoods that will have vacant schools in their neighborhoods. And then the issue of busing, I know it's been brought up. I have received 2 mailers in the last 2 weeks to my house that the school district is hiring bus drivers. So we're clearly having a problem there. We don't have enough bus drivers, and now we're increasing the need for busing. And then this is a comment on construction, and I don't know if this is the right place, but I also have a kiddo at East, and we're obviously dealing with the lockdowns, and it is scary and frightening. I love the Meadowlark building. It's a beautiful building, but my child told me that when they started the lockdowns there, he was very scared in those rooms that have the roll-up open window garage doors. That concerned me. He feels much safer at East. And I love the beautiful, the beautification of the schools, but maybe that could be taken into consideration as we build those new buildings. We do need to consider safety because this is the way that we're living now today. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you very much for letting us speak again. My name is Samantha Van Riper. My child goes to ARP, and I have been a very big advocate for some change on the South Side for as long as I can remember. Feels like a long time. Thank you, Commissioner Conklin, for driving by and seeing exactly what we've been dealing with and the hand that we have been dealt for several years. I appreciate you guys making this choice and giving us the school that we have so desperately needed for more than 10 to 20 years. We do feel like we have been overlooked for quite some time, and we are so very, very thankful. I believe that your choice today is giving our children the educational benefits in the future that the other kids in this district have been receiving up until this point. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to drive by, to listening to all of us. And while I do, my heart weighs heavy for the schools that are going to close down, and I feel for them greatly, but I am very thankful for the opportunity that you guys are giving to us. I do hope that the bill that Representative Larson is bringing forward for the major maintenance or the routine maintenance does go through. I think that there is a very serious disconnect when it comes to keeping our schools into the condition that they should be for everyday usage. I think that we, as a school district, unfortunately have been neglecting our schools in hopes that if we don't put money into them, then we do get a new school. And that's kind of what we have been told in the past over and over again. East Ridge is no picnic, and still trying to get things going there has been an absolute struggle for safety, security, issues that we have. And I feel, and speaking honestly, I have asked for several things. They are working with me on them to get that building to a safety standard that I think is definitely still needed. But we do get the pushback that, it's going to be demolished. So why are we putting money into it? And I think we need to change that way of thinking. I think we need to worry about the kids that are in these buildings right now. I know it's spending money on buildings that may be demolished in the future, but at the same sense, our security and our educational quality still needs to be addressed for now, if that makes sense. Just because it's going to go away in the future does not mean that it's not necessarily needed now. It is definitely needed now. So I appreciate your guys' choice today, and I appreciate your time, and thank you very much for the choice you guys made.
You know, just to update you, about a year and a half ago, this board and the legislative select committee on school facilities, we toured the old art building and the area around there. And yeah, it's been on my to-do list since that day, so.
It has been an ongoing concern for quite some time. I have worked really hard diligently, being at every single PAC meeting. I'm the CDM parent. I member of the CCRD. I do the PIC. I am there as often as I can, and I'm advocating for our school and our Southside schools, not just ARP, but our Southside schools. We definitely need more attention on our district, our triad, than what we have been given in the past, and I appreciate the equality that you guys are going to be affording us in the future.
I'm from Buffalo, and we kind of took offense to when your high school football team became the Bison too, so just in case you want to know.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Any more on the? Okay.
Heather, if you could please unmute and introduce yourself to the commission.
Good morning, Heather Webb Springer. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for the time to speak. It seems like this was already decided, so I'm not sure if public comment prior to the vote this morning would have helped. I would like to kindly remind you that this vote and this process, the actions of the district, the consultants, and the board have not been pursuant to Wyoming statute, which I think is quite important to keep in mind. Public impact and education have not been prioritized or considered in this process. When we're thinking about education, we need to think about the students and the souls that are in these schools every day. I agree very strongly that ARP has been neglected. I agree very strongly that Hobbs has been neglected. What continues to not be said is that in option 1B, ARP and Hobbs were also prioritized. We should remind ourselves and hold responsibility, the district, that ARP is a problem because the district chose to neglect that school, not invest in maintaining, and they took it offline prematurely. Now we have chosen to create 8 ARP, 8. An ARP representative just said that their students should not be bused. We're now going to be busing 8. Maybe, who knows, based on the fictitious benefit from the consultants, they do not know where my children will go. There is bad data, bad research, no public comment, and the benefits are fictitious. When we talk about equity and parent engagement and parent access, that decreases when you take children out of their neighborhood. It is appalling that we now have to think in order to remedy one mistake, we should make 8 more. My children will not be going to Laramie County School District 1. Because of this vote, my children will not come to this district. I know many families who also feel the same way. This is not prioritizing education. This is not prioritizing students. It is not pursuant to Wyoming statute, and there are problems. We should all agree that when decisions such as this are made, we should have sound data. We should have ample public comment from everyone. We should continue to ask ourselves why representation is not being heard from the schools that are slated to be closed, 4 of which are in the South Triad. We're doing this to remedy the South Triad, and we're closing 4 of their schools. And we do not know where those children will go. We should look at the numbers. We should rely on facts and good information and ample public comment when we make decisions such as this. That has not been done. This has been very disingenuous. And our family and our community and many communities, not just one in Cheyenne, are now drastically impacted for the rest of their lives. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Abby, if you could please unmute and introduce yourself to the commission.
Hi, it's Abigail Bodewines. I'm turning my camera on so it's clear that I am at home, not at work for this. I found it very curious that none of you talked about the gross math error that was made in this study, the adding of the baseline cost to every option that my husband pointed out yesterday. That is a fatal flaw to this study. I understand you all probably don't understand the math. I didn't. It took me a while. I'm a lawyer. I don't like math. Haven't taken it since high school. But I do remember fractions, and I know that if you add numbers to the numerator and you don't change the denominator, you've just changed that division and that outcome. And it is pretty much as simple as that, guys. And I know the name Franz Fuchs doesn't mean much to you, but it means a lot to a lot of people in this state. I don't think you understand that he's a Georgetown Harvard graduate. He has spent 10 years working for the state doing data analysis. He does math classes in his free time so that when he puts forth studies, he can actually put the equations into his studies so that when people make decisions based on his analysis, when they impact people's lives, 1,000 kids I'm hearing, that they can do so with knowing that they are making the right choice. I think you need to understand that. When we talk to legislators, they don't even blink when Franz tells them that their math is wrong because they know Franz is right. Franz might not be able to give directions very well, but he never makes mistakes on math. And I think it's grossly irresponsible for this commission to ignore the fatal flaw in this study. You are going to bind our hands and you are going to end up jeopardizing this funding for ARP because you refuse to look at alternatives that would keep schools open when every single alternative put forward rebuilt ARP. You've turned this at the district's doing into an us versus them situation, and it's making it impossible. Everybody wants ARP to get rebuilt. It is horrendous what that district did to that school. They're the ones that let it get into I see the puzzling look. They're the ones that let it get that bad. They're the ones that condemned it without getting funding and are now busing students over. That was an intentional decision to force the legislature's hand. I think that's all I have right now.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the room? Final one on the internet. Oh, we got.
Good morning, Chair and
Morning.
members of the commission. My name is Brandon Swain. Currently have a junior at East High School. Just wanted to extend my gratitude to have the privilege to be able to walk my kids to school. I understand that it's a privilege. It's not an inherent right. It's a privilege that I've been able to afford. But as so evident with some of these comments and the needs in the community, not every community member has been able to afford that privilege. So I'm grateful for the commission. I have great respect for your inclusivity of public comments and taking a look at it as a whole. I'm happy that this motion passed because my perspective is that it's going to finally enable some empowerment to those who have been, in my opinion, perpetually underserved in the district. So again, if I can reiterate my comments, I'm grateful to have the facilities maintained as long as they've had. I understand that the need to change. I fully trust your process and the study. I believe some of the comments today reflect the inequity between parents living in certain districts. It appears overwhelmingly it's been from the Central Triad. So not an indictment against those parents, rather an observation that not all of us have the ability to speak. So I believe that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, young man.
Okay, Susan, if you could please unmute and introduce yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Susan Wolf. My son is in 3rd grade at Deming. This is concerning because we picked this neighborhood so that my son could be heard and seen in his school. He does best in a small learning environment. The staff and students at Deming know him and care for him, and they treat him like family. We were looking forward to having him go to Miller because that's where my husband went to school when Miller was K through 6. My brother-in-law went to Deming and Miller for his K through 6. We were looking forward to my son walking to Miller from my mother-in-law's house, who lives a block away. I'm afraid that kids like my son are going to fall through the cracks because he is a really quiet soul. He doesn't do well in large crowds. So I am exceedingly disappointed that you are closing down such a fantastic family school. We love Deming and Miller, and this is just so upsetting to everyone that I've spoken to. I think you could have picked a better choice, but it seems like your mind was made up before any of this happened. And now, after 4th grade, I'm going to have to figure out a way to get my son to school, wherever that may be, because Coyote Ridge is huge. I don't know if my son will be able to function in such a large school. And I'm disappointed and I'm sad because we moved to this neighborhood because of Deming and Miller. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and the board. The rhetorical tool that you've fallen victim to. Can you tell us who you are? Yes, my name is Will Jones. I'm a parent from the community. The rhetorical tool you've fallen victim to is called a false dichotomy. When I ask my kids to put on a coat in the morning, I don't say, do you want to wear a coat? Because that's no. Ask them, do you want the blue coat or do you want the red coat? Because that tricks them into making a choice. You've fallen victim to that. You had another choice, but you were told all or nothing. And that's a pretty devious thing to do. It's very upsetting that the district that put ARP in this situation is now telling you to close other schools and you feel like you have to. And I've heard deference to that recommendation because after all, they're closest to the kids. They were also closest to the decision that put ARP in that situation. The judgment might be flawed. I'm disappointed that the study of 1B didn't go to the school board. It came to you, didn't go to the school board, and it's unclear it was the same 1B that was presented to the school board. That's somewhat disappointing to hear that the shifting battlefield might be shifting. I'm disappointed overall that traditional schools are being abandoned in such a cavalier fashion. I heard that maybe some time ago, some students had to bus from one town to another, maybe 15 miles. Well, right now you're talking about a lot of kids getting bused. That's not 15 miles. The time is going to be similar. It takes about 40 minutes from kids in my neighborhood to get to their high school. The junior high, or excuse me, the 4 through the 5-6 is going to be even farther, more than 40 minutes one way. And what do you think happens on a school bus? I rode a school bus to school. It wasn't good. I walk my kids to school now because school buses are terrible. It's a terrible place. What are kids doing? What are kids doing? They're looking at phones. They're sharing phones. They're getting in fights. You can put cameras on the buses. But I've had to watch those videos and they don't catch the misbehavior that's egregious. They don't catch how kids touch each other. They're not going to catch how kids are showing each other their phones for 40 minutes a day Those kids are basically unsupervised. That's how you're abandoning tradition. That's how you're abandoning traditional schools in Cheyenne. That's pretty disappointing. I don't think you can put a dollar figure on the importance of walking a kid to school, but you could put a dollar figure on how much buses are going to cost. It appears that wasn't done. You're going to have to put a dollar figure on how much bus drivers are going to cost. You can do that. And if you wanted to look at the externalities, you could put dollar figures on the amount it's going to cost the parents and the communities. You didn't do that. But here we are abandoning traditional Cheyenne schools because there was a false dichotomy and you fell victim to it. I'm disappointed. This is bad governance. Look for it in the future. It looks like this one ship has sailed for you, but watch for this in the future, because if it's working now, it's going to work again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional? Any additional? Seeing that, I would now entertain a motion to adjourn. What? Oh, you did?
Kiwi, go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm Kiwi Burkhart. Thank you, commissioners, Commissioner Conklin, and I'm going to butcher it, Kakelhofer, for your comments on the South Triad. I've never seen ARP. I gave the first public comment last night, and I wish that I had waited. I'm a Bain parent. I don't want Bain to close. I don't want any of the schools to close. However, the South Side has been underserved, undermined, and forgotten in several ways that the commission has no purview over in terms of sports and reporting. The South Side is just kind of the forgotten child, I guess. And my involvement in the district and with my son's school is still pretty fresh. And I think that if this was the only option for the South Triad kids to have the same opportunity, great. But I would urge the commission or whoever can hold these collaborative pieces accountable back to Title 21, Chapter 15, Section 116, stating that any school board will be required to engage in a collaborative process, that going forward with the rest of the plans that are to come and boundary revisions, all of those little logistical minutia pieces, I would just urge that accountability be held and that the district and the school board do engage in a collaborative process with the community members. There are lots of people in the community across all the triads that want to have a say and some input here. Bain in particular, after all of the public comments last night, the South Triad, a lot of our families don't have the flexibility to house shop and choose which school we go to. And the Bain neighborhood in particular, we're right next to Sunrise Elementary. It's doubtful that we will go there. It looks like we will all be bused over or drive over to the new ARP. And that's a bummer, but it's a working class neighborhood. I'm sure most of the families that attend Bain are working 8 to 5 and are going to have to put their kids on those buses. So I would just urge strongly that collaborative process be held accountable and that parents are afforded the opportunity to give input into what's to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ansley, if you could please unmute and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ansley Mao. I am an architect in town and have been advocating for housing issues that we have in our community. I want to thank you all for listening to everyone's comment. And I just ask that next steps, I guess, in determining the ancillary costs that will come from this study, busing and the arterial roads, the cross guards and walkways that will have to be implemented into these larger structures for schools, and the larger parking lots, just the way that we are building schools in a more quote unquote modern way that's secondary to our neighborhood schools and those cost implications to the tax funding that we don't have. And that's not implemented within this study. I guess I would urge your legislature to find alternatives to what that will happen down in the future with all of these changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional? Okay, since we've been through our agenda, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, it's non-debatable. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Sign. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here.